Good morning. Welcome to Ben's Hot Takes for a special spoiler review of Wandavision. And a special, I have my guest, 50 Cents of Geek. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. How
You
are you?
ready to... I'm doing well. I overslept, which is a good thing to have happen.
Well, I underslept, so we balance each other out.
Yes, me too. I like
That's
that.
why we have such great dynamic.
Ah, so you ready to talk about this show?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. So, um, this is a quick, really quick, non-spoiler review, just 5 seconds. Wandavision, you know what? I can't really go into it, non-spoiler. What did you think of season and the finale, 50?
So, just to clarify, we're talking the whole season or just the finale?
Let's do the whole season as a whole.
Perfectly fine by me. So, this is technically our first official MCU show. I mean, I know we had the Agents of Shields and the Daredevils and all of that. Those, unfortunately, as much as I hate to admit it, those unfortunately don't count. So this is the first MCU Kevin Feige approved show that we're getting, and if this is essentially their Iron Man of the TV universe, and if this is their first foray, because that's the word people use these days, if that this is their first foray into the world of MCU on television, that's a great way to start. I mean, I would even put this show. Okay, this is gonna come off as wrong a bit, but this is the hot take show, so I'm allowed to say it. I think this show did a much better job setting up the future of all the other shows to come, better than the first Iron Man movie. I'm not saying it's better than the first Iron Man movie. That's not what I'm saying. Don't take my words out of context. But I'm saying that to lay the foundations, because when they made the first Iron Man, they didn't necessarily thought they were going to have the cinematic universe that we call the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was just one good movie after another. So knowing that they're invested in this, they've got all these other plans like Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all that stuff coming. They did a much better job setting up the universe than the first Iron Man did.
Well, to be fair, like you said, I don't think they were planning phases ahead when they first came out with Iron Man. They just wanted to make a good movie, and luckily for
That's
them,
exactly what I said. That's exactly what I
yeah,
said.
yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really liked the early episodes of this when it was more traditional sitcom. It was a weird but good way to bring in new viewers. But once we got into the MCU stuff, like with episode 3 and 4, okay, now we're really hooked. Now we're getting to the meaning part of it. And I loved all the side characters, the boss, the co-workers, and you really have to give it to Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. Yep, they brought their A game to their show. I don't know who I liked better. And of course, Catherine Hahn as Agnes, Agatha, whatever you want to call her.
Agnesta. I
A-
combined the two.
Agnes, I like that.
I will say the sitcom element was my favorite part of the show, and I think I said this several times that episode 4 was and still is my least favorite episode of the season because they broke away from it and they had the big explain-o-vision and oh look, it's not just a sitcom, there's a story behind it. I'm like, knowing the MCU, I kind of figured that on my own. I didn't need an entire episode devoted to explaining what's happening, and I felt that episode was too early in the season. I would have much preferred to be that episode closer to the end, closer to the Agatha Harkness reveal
Well,
portion of the.
here's the thing. I will play devil's advocate for a second. You already, you already know I love the MCU, right?
I know where you're going with this, but keep going. Yes.
I think that episode was there for people who doesn't know the MCU. For newcomers who like the sitcom but have no idea what's happening with the main characters.
If I could steal, if I could steal a catchphrase from our friend Soda, fair enough. I I admit I was being a little selfish there. I didn't think about that because I'm so used, and I try not to do this, but I fall into that trap a bunch of times. I'm already conditioned to believing that everyone knows what the MCU is. Keep forgetting that just like Stan Lee's philosophy on comic books, every issue, and in this case every movie slash TV show, needs to be treated as if it's someone's first introduction into a property. And I I admit I failed to do so with this show. So good on
And,
you for.
and I knew that I knew that also. I knew that same thing also. Like everybody was upset that there was no big cameo this season, but I think Evan Peters is the big cameo. Because yes, we know them as MCU fans, but if somebody's not an MCU fan, they're like, who the hell is this? Is somebody brand new to them?
I can go and one up that and say that the scroll at the end, that was the cameo, not the character itself. The fact that there are scrolls now, and this is a setup to that post credit scene was essentially a prequel, sequel, midquel, partly to the post credit scene in Spider-Man: Far From Home. It's a setup to the next Captain Marvel movie and everything they're doing next with the MCU, with Sword and everything. It's also sort of a sequel to um, Captain Marvel, with Monica being the daughter of um, Carol Danvers' best friend. It's and remember, they never actually explicitly said there's going to be a big cameo. That was a fan's extrapolation of what was said, because and it's sometimes it happens in science a lot, believe it or not, and especially in the world of paleontology, where you find a fossil of a fossilized bone, you deduct that it belongs to this creature, and you cross-reference it with another theory from a different scientist in a completely different field, and you get how that creature used to live in what type of environment. And that's how a lot of our perception of how dinosaurs lived back then came about. That's how we assume the dinosaurs are basically ancestors of birds. That's pretty much what happened here. Like Elizabeth Olsen said something, and she didn't even say something. She was asked by an interviewer who structured a question in a very specific way. The interviewer asked, I believe that the exact thing she asked was, "The Mandalorian had this big Luke Skywalker as a cameo. Does this show have something similar to that?" And she just said yes. She didn't say anything beyond that. And then people cross-referenced that with something that Paul Bettany said, and he was kind of being a bit of a troll there, that he got a chance to work with an actor he never got a chance to work with, which later we found out it was talking about himself. And people just combined two theories together and just not theories, sorry. People just combined two interviews together and created this fan theory that there's going to be a Luke Skywalker level cameo. And I think both were correct. I think Paul Bettany did play opposite someone he wanted to play opposite for a very long time. He even said so as much. But the thing that Elizabeth Olsen was referring to, I think, was, I mean, it could be a lot of different things, but it could also be, in my opinion, that's what the scrolls coming in and the setup to the next. It could also be the Dark Hole. It could be the idea that the Scarlet Witch is not a mutant. She's something new, that something I believe original to the MCU. Could be a lot of different things. I mean, she never. That's the problem, where she never explicitly said this is exactly what's going to happen. She just said she just gave a vague positive answer to a question that was structured in a very specific way.
Yeah, I think she meant, and I have no way of knowing for sure. I think she meant Evan Peters.
Could be. I mean, like I said, it could be. Yeah, it could be a bunch of different things. I'm not saying.
Yeah.
I just think it's what I think, and like I said, it could be. It could be a million different answers to what she was referring to.
What did you think of the villain? The villains, Hayward and Agatha and all those people.
Would we consider White Vision as one of the villains?
No, he's more of a tool. He's more of a, like a henchman.
Fair enough. There you go. Not got me. Now, what I like to attribute this show is, I think the entire show was something new and original and going in a completely different direction than the rest of the MCU has done up to this point. But the final episode was essentially a third act of an MCU movie with all the flaws and positives that come with it. The positives being a great villain versus hero battle, but one of the flaws is a slightly underdeveloped villain. Now, obviously, we've got almost a full season with Agatha and Hayward, but the final episode was admittedly and probably justifiably a little bit rushed, especially with the villains, which is a problem that we've seen with Marvel for a very long time now. It's not like it's anything new to us. But sometimes a rushed, oversimplified villain is exactly what you need, especially in the MCU, and we've seen it to great success multiple times. Now, obviously, sometimes you get like a Michael Keaton's Vulture, a Killmonger, a Thanos. Sometimes you get those types of villains, but sometimes you get these types of villains, and that's really all you need for the sake of the story, because that's part of Kevin Feige's philosophy, which is the focus is the heroes, not the villains. The villains come and go. Just like sometimes you get like Baron Mordo, who is still likely to show up in the MCU. Same thing with Agatha. Maybe those two team up together. Who knows? But
well, not forget, Baron Mordo is already in the MCU. He was not Strange.
That's what I'm saying. He's going to come back, probably.
Okay, I thought you meant to show up for the first time. Misunderstood you.
Show up in like a Doctor Strange 2 or maybe a WandaVision Season 2. Who knows? But that's one of the main when Marvel keeps, because Marvel has a thing where they kill off the villains at the end. When they don't do that, it's usually because they have a story purpose for keeping them around. And I'm still holding on hope that Emil Blonsky's Abomination will show up.
I think I heard he's coming back in She-Hulk.
Was it confirmed though?
I thought it was. Maybe not.
I hope so.
I remember seeing. I'll look later, but I remember seeing it on like Deadline or something.
Well, if it's Deadline, it's more of a chance of it being true than, let's say, several other sites that shall not be mentioned today.
Yeah. What else did I want to add? There were so many side characters in this show. From Dolly. Even the Agatha in the early episodes was a side character. Herb, do you have a favorite side character from season 1 of WandaVision?
Hmm. Well, definitely Agatha.
Okay.
Like, I don't consider Darcy or Jimmy Woo because those are characters we've already been introduced to in other movies.
Okay.
They're not original to this show. I would, however, consider Monica being one of them because we saw her as a little kid, but it's not the same Monica that we see in this show. And obviously, the kids.
Right.
I,
No
I,
kids.
I like to see more of those. Now, speaking of which, do you think the kids are coming back?
Oh, I think Doctor Strange 2 will be all about Wanda trying to find a way to bring them back. I don't know if she'll succeed, but she's going to try. There's instruction by that and post credit scene.
Yeah. And do you think she's going to be the villain, though? Or is Doctor Strange going to help? Like, I think Doctor Strange, especially the way that he's being portrayed in the MCU, which a slight differentiating difference from the comics. He's the guy that he will maintain peace and order, but he's willing to bend the rules ever so slightly to get there. Which is, oh, I appreciate the change that they did with this character from the comics. Like we saw him, he was willing to use the time stone to trap Dormammu in that time loop, which normally is something that a sorcerer of his caliber shouldn't do, but he did it anyway because it was the right thing to do, and that's obviously what pissed off Mordo, turned him against him. So I can definitely see a future where Strange is going to um, come to Wanda in her time of need, and he's gonna because he's well. Obviously, we don't know. We know from what Agatha says is that she's more powerful than Sorcerer Supreme. She's not. Obviously, Wanda's not aware of how powerful she is yet, but I can definitely see a future in which Doctor Strange comes to Wanda and says, "Hey, listen, I know what it's like to lose people, because obviously he, well, it's not in the movies yet, but in the comics, Doctor Strange lost his parents in a car accident. His sister drowned to death,
Oh my.
and his brother was hospitalized. He's a vegetable again because of a car accident. There seems to be a running theme with his character in the comics. And obviously, in the comics, eventually his brother gets brought back as a vampire, but we're not going to talk about that in a moment. But so if they're going in that direction, Doctor Strange is going to be like, hey, listen, I know what it's like to lose people that you care about. I've certainly lived through it. I will help you get your children back into this reality, whatever the cost. And I think that's going to lead into whatever is going to be the main threat of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. They're going to search for a proper version of Wanda's kids, and by the end of it, they're going to realize that there is no reality in which they can successfully bring Wanda's kids into the MCU's reality, which is when she's going to turn and she's going to be the villain. That's my opinion. That's how I see it, and it's all going to stem from this one show. And we now know exactly why she would do that, and that would be a more fleshed out villain role because we had an entire season. Obviously, we've seen her in the movies, but we have an entire season to know why her grief and what she's going to do it will be justified.
I like that. But don't you think going through different realities like that, don't you think that has a little too much like Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse?
Did you like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse?
I did. I did. I don't
Then I
get
don't
it.
see a
Like,
problem here. I don't see a problem here. I don't understand why people. Oh, this feels too much like that movie. I'm like, was it a good movie? Yes. Then what's the problem? Like, if they're trying to do something that's too much like, obviously not a ripoff, but if they're trying to do something that's really similar to something else that succeeded, why is that considered a bad thing? And technically speaking, they didn't actually go through different realities searching for one thing. I mean, it was sort of Kingpin's attempt, but That's not exactly what the whole theme and direction of the movie was. I'm talking about from the hero's perspective. That's what they're going to do. I'm assuming.
Okay. You know what? That would be cool. I mean, somehow, well, now I'm going to talk to Spider-Man 3. Somehow we're going to have to see why Electro, why not, and who else is going to be in it? It feels like everybody's going to be in Spider-Man 3. Somehow they're
My
going to have to explain that.
my biggest question is Tom Holland's Spider-Man going to be in Spider-Man 3 at this point? I will say though, after seeing what happened especially in this episode of WandaVision, I'm kind of starting to think that they're doing the same thing with Doc Ock and Electro. Like, oh yeah, we cast the same actor. Why did you do that? I don't know. We thought it was cool. They did a good job. We brought them back, but they're playing the same character but in a different setting. My fear is that they're going to do the same thing with that they did with Pietro in this show, and it's all going to depend on the execution, of course. But that's what I think they're going with Doc Ock and Electro at this point.
Well, let me ask you this. If Jimmy Fox is a different Electro, would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I mean,
same thing with
well, actually, at this point, I would be glad to see a different Electro than the one we got in Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I liked the movie. I mean, I liked it better than the first Amazing Spider-Man, but
you did? Wow.
that was not a strong point of that movie.
Yeah, I wanted to like Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I can't. I like Spider-Man 3 way more than Amazing Spider-Man 2, personally.
Well, to be fair, Spider-Man 3 is not that bad of a movie. It has a lot of, let's just say that it has a few bad stuff in it, but the bad stuff are so bad that they outweigh the treasure trove of good that's in that movie. And I think it's a worth the Sam Raimi Spider-Man franchise. I think it could have ended in a different way.
I've been saying that for years. That and X-Men The Last Stand. I like that movie quite a bit.
You know, someone asked me this week, who do you think did it better, X-Men The Last Stand or X-Men Dark Phoenix? And the answer that I gave was Last Stand, and maybe this is just, because it's been around more, but the answer that I gave was X-Men The Last Stand, for better or for worse, is definitely the more memorable one. You don't necessarily remember it for the good parts. Some of it, yes, but you don't necessarily remember it in a good way, but it's definitely the one you remember. It's not the one that you saw it once and then it immediately left your memory like Dark Phoenix did. So you like the same example here is you remember Spider-Man 3 more than you remember Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh, I'll be honest. Well, The Last Stand, I wouldn't say The Last Stand by easy. Because for me, I think Doc Phoenix has better actors, but I love the Last Stand characters. I love the old characters better than the new generation. Except for Magneto and except for Professor X. I put all four of those characters on the same level.
Nice. You can't choose which is your favorite, I'm assuming.
Right. I mean, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen were incredible, and the same as Jim McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. All four of them were incredible as characters.
Let me just piggyback on what you just said, and this is the hot take show, so I'm allowing myself to say this. Because we're both of us white Jewish men, right?
Right.
Would you be okay if they recast whenever they get around to doing another Magneto or Professor X? Would you be okay if they were black people, especially specifically when I'm talking about Magneto, because that's the common theory that seems to be floating around. And we're both obviously fans of the John Campea show, and he thinks he should be a black person, a person of color, from the Rwandan genocide, because that the Holocaust was the worst chapter of humanity at the time. The follow up to that was obviously the Rwandan genocide, probably not quite as severe, but for Magneto to be the character that he needs to be, he needs to experience the worst of humanity at the time. And that's where his disdain for humanity comes from. Would you be okay with that? Again, this is a hot take, so feel free to.
And you know, I would be. I don't see a problem with that.
Me too.
Like
And go ahead.
and I don't see no fucking problem with a black Superman. I'm sorry.
Me
Yeah,
neither. It's an alien. He could be green for all we care. But
exactly.
to bring it back to Magneto, because it still sort of ties into WandaVision, because it used to be once upon a time her father. Regarding the Magneto stuff, I'm seeing a lot of people getting upset about it, as the internet usually does, because no, I was taught to believe that the Holocaust was the worst thing that happened to humanity. I'm seeing a lot of Israeli people, as a matter of fact, saying that he has to be Jewish, he has to be this, because the Holocaust was the worst thing that happened. He can't be anything other than that. And my answer to that is, me personally, as a white Jewish Israeli man, with no connection to the Holocaust, other than the fact that once upon a time I had a friend. I don't really speak to him too often anymore, but I have a friend that his grandparents are Holocaust survivors, and that's
Wow.
basically the only connection I have to that part of history. But the reason I'm okay with Magneto not being a Holocaust survivor, a white Holocaust survivor, is I've seen that before multiple times. They cast Magneto twice in the same franchise, and it was great. I've seen it in animated series, I've seen it in video games. I know what Magneto is like as a white Jewish Holocaust survivor. Give me something different, similar to what you just said about Superman. I've seen white Superman more than I've seen Magneto. We've had from the Christopher Reeves, my favorite, Tom Welling, Henry Cavill, Brandon Routh. We've seen white Superman so many times, and we have an opportunity now to do something different with the character and give people of color who had traditionally had less of a chance of getting representation in movies and TV shows, especially in the superhero genre. Let's do something different for now.
Well, and to piggyback off of that, if they did make Magneto a white Jewish male, the age wouldn't work. He would have to be like in his 80s or something. In the
Here's where
MCU
I
time.
here's where I have a theory. Now, obviously, I am not employed by Disney in any way, shape, or form. As a matter of fact, I'm paying Disney. So put that into perspective. Disney does not pay me. I literally pay Disney. So keep that with a grain of salt. But here's if I was in Kevin Feige's shoes, and if I was in the position that I needed to bring the X-Men into the MCU, I'm not saying that's how they should do it. I'm just saying that's how I would do it.
Okay.
First of all, you create a separate timeline in the 60s, just like they did with X-Men First Class. That way you can still have a Jewish Holocaust survivor Magneto and a younger Professor Xavier. So you do a couple of movies setting up the X-Men in the 60s, like, I don't know, 5 movies, and then have some sort of multiverse crossover event where the X-Men are brought into the MCU's continuity in the modern day, but they were from the 1960s. That's the only logical way I can see Magneto still being Magneto, the white Jewish Holocaust survivor. And that way, you don't lose one of the core aspects of X-Men, which is that mutants have been around since forever, and they've been persecuted just like the Jewish people have been for thousands of years. And you get that natural hatred of humans towards mutants and vice versa. And if you create that separate universe, you get a few good movies where you can focus on the philosophies that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby infused into those comics back in the days of prejudice and segregation. You put all those themes into those movies. Then when you bring them into the MCU, you're not only bringing just the X-Men, you're also bringing all the humans who grew up for generations upon generations hating mutants. You bring them into the MCU, and like it spreads like germs. You get those haters of mutants spreading their hatred into the people of the MCU who are not used to seeing mutants running around. This is all technically new to them, even though they lived in a world where superheroes have been existing for over a decade. That's the only logical way I can see them doing the best of all worlds. You get the themes of segregation and racism. You get Jewish Holocaust survivor Magneto, and you get X-Men in the MCU. Will they tie that into Wanda and the twins? I don't know. Maybe we can say that in that universe, he had a daughter named Wanda and Pietro, and a son named Pietro. Maybe they decide to go in that way direction, but I don't know. That's basically how I would have handled the X-Men in the MCU if I was in charge, and thank goodness I'm not.
I like that. I like that quite a bit. Yeah, I have no idea how they're going to handle the X-Men. I don't envy Kevin Feige because it feels like no matter what he does, he's going to pick some people up.
It comes with the territory, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons why in the army, at some point I realized I didn't wanted several positions that I was offered in the military because you piss off people no matter what you do. And Kevin Feige knows that. He knows that. So I think he's going to do his best, which is the same thing that he's done for us for 13 years now, since 2008.
Okay, well, let me ask you on this. You're making a new X-Men movie. In your perfect dream casting, who do you cast as Magneto? Who do you cast as Professor X? And who do you cast as Wolverine? Do you have anybody in mind for any of those?
You're asking the wrong person. I don't know shit about casting. That's why I normally don't do these castings because, I can give you 10,000 names that the first thing that come to mind, but eventually what Kevin Feige does, and it's something that he's done consistently over and over and over again, is cast the one person you never would have seen coming. Most of the times they're complete unknowns, and then they just grow into the character. So I try not to base what I want the character to be like based on who the actor is. I prefer to trust Kevin Feige's decision with regards to casting and let that actor grow into his character over time, just like a lot of, like 90% of the MCU actors have already done.
I really think that Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, I think a lot of people saw that one coming.
Myself included. The second I heard that his name was even in contention, I was like, yep, that's going to be Doctor Strange, because I'm a huge, I don't know if you are also, but I'm a huge Sherlock fan. And when I saw that, this guy would work perfectly as Doctor Strange. I can even see him as Doctor Who at some point. And he's British, so that works. But for now, for the time being, that I can definitely say that was definitely the one casting off the top of my head that I was before it was officially announced. That was the one casting I was uh, championing. And that's the one thing I wanted to see happen.
Yeah, I'm can't think of anyone else in the MCU that I saw coming. The other one I saw coming was Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but also going in that direction, no one expected Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine, and people hated it at first, and now people can't unsee him as the Wolverine. Which, if I think it's a little bit of a different direction. I don't know if you've seen this, but in the 80s, there was a pilot for an X-Men TV show. It was called Pride of the X-Men, mostly centering around Kitty Pryde. But and the same characters also appeared in a couple of episodes of Spider-Man and his amazing friends. They had an Australian Wolverine in there, a Wolverine with an Australian accent, and it was terrible. I'm saying it now. It was terrible. It was not what you would picture of Wolverine. Cut to 15 years later, an Australian guy is playing Wolverine, and he's one of the best superhero castings of all time.
I'll say this, and then hot takes. Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is the best superhero casting, but for me, better than Robert Downey Jr., better than Christian Bale as Batman, better than Chris Hemsworth as Thor, better than Chris Evans as Captain America. Hugh Jackman as Logan.
Better than this guy?
Time.
Thought so. But yeah, I'll definitely have a hard time arguing with you on that because, I mean, well, it's a bit cliche, but obviously the best one by default is Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury because they literally changed the character to fit him before he was even cast. So I think by default that's the perfect casting in a superhero role. But again, like I said, it's a default cliche answer. So,
but here's the thing: is Nick Fury a superhero?
I'll give you an answer that I give whenever people ask me that question, and the answer is this. You know, because in the comics, they do have this thing where he gets badly injured in a mission. He was, I believe, a Vietnam war veteran in the comics. The original one, not the Nick Fury version, but in the original comics, he gets injured from a frag grenade. That's how he get the eye patch. By the way, he gets fragments in his eye, and then another explosion, which forced him to take a serum that causes him to age very slowly, which kind of explains why he's a Vietnam War vet and he's still around in like 2010s, 2020s, and it also explains why he has the eye patch. Because that happened at around the same time, so his eye couldn't heal properly. So like I said, yes, no, depends on your definition. Like I was having this argument with a friend of mine recently. Is a superhero really a superhero if he doesn't have superpowers? And I see superhero as more of a general term, with a few minor facets that go into it. Because technically speaking, Batman falls under the category of superhero. Yeah, when he doesn't have super. Same thing as Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, the Green Arrow. All these guys, they fall under the category of superhero, and they don't have superpowers. So it all depends on your definition of a superhero,
Gotcha.
in my opinion. I think a better term to answer your question regarding Nick Fury, comic book hero.
Okay. But the important thing is he was hit scratched by a cat in the eye.
Yeah, that's the important part. Mother flurkin!
Did you think, to bring it back to WandaVision, did you think there was a chance Fury might show up in the finale?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. When they take Monica to the theater, I was fully expecting Nick Fury to show up there. In hindsight, I understand why he didn't, because he's too busy running things on Sword. Like, we keep expecting Nick Fury to show up in all these different places. We keep forgetting Nick Fury is a very busy guy. Even more so after the snap. That's why he had Talos masquerading as him, talking to Peter Parker, because he needed to maintain the illusion, if you will. That movie's all about illusions. He needed to maintain the illusion that Nick Fury is still on Earth handling Shield business, while the real Nick Fury is up in space, taking care of extraterrestrial threats, which are the much bigger threats that we're going to see. Like, I don't think we're going to see this in a follow-up to WandaVision. Actually, maybe in Doctor Strange, but you would assume that Nick Fury now is taking care of threats beyond Earth. Like, the first couple of years of him running Shield was terrestrial threats. Now, I mean, if Thanos could come in and basically rip apart the Avengers as well as he did and wipe out half of the universe, who else is out there? Like, we still don't know. Obviously, we're going to get King the Conqueror in Ant-Man 2, as 3, sorry, but we don't know. Is Galactus still out there? I don't know. Ego is out of the picture, obviously, but there are so many extraterrestrial threats to the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we will never even see coming. So Nick Fury wants to be ready for any scenario, and that's why I understand why Nick Fury wasn't in WandaVision, even though I was half expecting him to be there.
You're right, it makes sense. If you had to take a guess, what's coming first? Fantastic Four or the X-Men?
Forgive me for saying, but this is kind of a stupid answer because we already have an announcement of Fantastic Four. We already have a director attached. We know the movie's coming. We don't know when or even if the X-Men will be added, unless they start peppering in some characters in places we don't see coming, and then say, "Oh yeah, those characters were X-Men, and we're going to do a movie with them." But even then, even if they do decide that, because of the timing, an X-Men movie, a straight up X-Men movie, not X-Men characters, that will be after the Fantastic Four.
Okay. I forgot that, to be honest with you. I forgot that. Yeah, who they have doing it? That's Spider-Man director.
John Watts, the Spider-Man director.
Let me ask you this. You don't have to say who. Do you think they already know who the Fantastic Four is going to be played by? If you had to guess, do you think they already know?
At this point, because it's such a long ways off, and because they had obviously a year to prepare for it because of COVID, I think they have an idea. I think they're having talks with whoever they think should be cast as the Fantastic Four. But do they have them signed yet? I don't think so.
Okay. Talking about WandaVision again, when they put up the engineer, how would you felt? I forget what episode it was, but in that episode, if they revealed John Krasinski from The Office as Reed Richards. Would you have been happy about that?
Okay, here's my hot take. I don't understand why people are so married to that idea of John Krasinski and Emily Blunt as Reed Richards and Sue Storm. Why? Because they're married? Because they work well together? Like, what is the justification for casting these two as those characters? I never understood that because sometimes the internet goes wild with theories. Sometimes I think it might have just started because someone made a fan art of those two guys as those characters, and ever since then, that was the only thing people could see them as. Like, why? First of all, why are you doing Kevin Feige's job for him when he's already proven to you guys? You guys knew what the best Spider-Man would be before you even heard the name Tom Holland. Okay? You guys knew this was coming. You guys knew this was coming, and you were wrong on all fronts. Why are people fan casting these two actors as these two characters? And if that doesn't pan out, they're going to rage quit on the MCU. I don't get it. Why are people married to the idea of John Krasinski and Emily Blunt? Like, are they great actors? Sure they are. Do they work together? Of course they do, because they're married. Do they have to be the only answer? Why?
No, yeah, oh my God. I think
Here's-
you are so right, 50. You are so right. Because,
I mean, it goes back to the conversation we had earlier. Kevin Feige is going to cast the most out of left field choice for all four of the Fantastic Four, and nobody's going to see that coming. And then we're all going to be okay with it because they're going to do great in the role. Now, obviously, there are going to be those people who say that if those aren't, if it's not them, then I'm not watching the movies. But then they're going to crawl away to be the loud vocal minority.
yeah, we're going to get the hashtag Cash John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. And they don't
Hashtag not my Reed Richards. I can already see it now, but it'll be there for a while, and then it eventually will fade away into obscurity, like the Heath Ledger stuff, and just like the Craig not Bond hashtags. It'll all fade away. Like it's unfortunate that we come to a point where we know what's coming with the reactions to the fandom. We know how people are going to treat this, and we know that it's going to go away eventually. But
yeah.
whatever.
Well, the Snyder Cut hashtag went away real fast, right?
Well, the Snyder Cut stuff. First of all, it's the exception and not the rule. You gotta remember that. But also, the director was behind that, and the cast and crew were behind that. And it was a very specific situation to begin with obviously the tragedy that happened to Zack Snyder himself, and Warner Brothers using that tragedy as an excuse to let him go when they already fired him months before that. Like I said, you cannot compare that Snyder Cut stuff to something like Craig not Bond or the outrage that happened when Ben Affleck was cast as Batman. You cannot compare the two. And you can't compare it to what eventually is going to happen with John Krasinski and Emily Blunt as Reed Richards and Emily Blunt and the Sue Storm.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, let's wrap up. Thank you very much. One last final thing about WandaVision. Would you be happy if they came back with a season 2? Real quick, would you be?
Yes. If you would ask me a week ago, I would have said no chance in hell that series is coming back for season 2. After seeing this finale, I can definitely see the possibility, and I would be very happy if they go back to it. And I'm curious to see what the new gimmick is going to be. Like, are they going to go back to the same well with the sitcom stuff, or are they going to give us something new and fresh and exciting? That's what I'm interested to see, to find out.
Me too. I would totally watch it, but I don't think it's coming back. To be honest with you,
And if they do,
because
if they do bring it back, honestly, because we already know, we've already lived through the first season. I want them to just commit to it and just do an all sitcom stuff without any multiverse shenanigans. Because we know we just bring back Westview to what it was, just make it a more peaceful place without people being mind controlled and stuff, and just just go full in with the sitcom stuff. I mean, we've seen the first season. We already know what's coming. Just give us that, because that was my favorite part of the WandaVision stuff, was the sitcom stuff, not necessarily the superhero stuff.
gotcha. That would be cool. Maybe they'll do that. Maybe.
I hope so. Also, one
Yeah.
final thought. The Lion King is the best movie of all time, because I haven't actually brought it up on this episode. So I felt like I needed to reach my quota for today.
Maybe I'm going to watch that movie today. Maybe I will.
Not a bad movie to watch when you're just looking for something to watch.
I agree. 50, where can everyone find you?
You can find me on my channel, where 50 Shades of Geek, where I will be uploading my spoiler-filled review of the final episode of WandaVision. You can also find me on Twitch at 50 Shades Geek without the F, because apparently that was already taken. I do a series on Twitch where I try to beat all of Pokemon Shield using only one Shedinja, and then I take those Twitch streams and kind of re-edit them into small bite-sized episodes on my gaming channel, 50 Shades of Gaming. And if you're a fan of Pokemon, you can also look up my Patreon, patreon.com/Pokemon Star, Cross, and Crescent. I'm designing a Pokemon fan game based on Israel, the country where I live in. And Ben is a patron. He can tell you himself how great of reveals and artwork I share on that Patreon.
And so awesome. You're doing such a great job with that.
Thank you.
You can find me at Ben Radio 2. You can find me on the YouTube channel every Tuesday on Shooting the Breeze, every Friday on Recapping the Past, every Saturday. You can find me, 50, a friend Matt, a friend Soul on our main Get Ready show. You can also find me every Saturday on Matt Schmodown, my Schmodown show. And I think that's everything.
And
right?
every Sunday on the
And every Sunday on Ben's Hot Takes. Thank you, 50. Morning brain. Yeah, on that note, everybody, stay ready and smash cancer. See you next
Smash
week.
Cat.